In this episode, we want to go into John Wayne and Old Western comics. And before we discuss some of those, I'd like to give you one of the Duke's favorite quotes. He'd like to quote this: tomorrow is the most important thing in life. It comes in at midnight, and it comes in very clean. It's perfect when it arrives, and it puts itself in our hands, and it hopes that we've learned something from yesterday. John Wayne. That was, I understand, is one of his favorite sayings. And John Wayne had a lot of tomorrows. He had quite a few. And he lived to be 72 years old, and he really had a full life with all his films and his appearances on television, and also appearances at Academy Awards, different places. He had a very full life. He started out, he was born in Winterset, Iowa, and his family lived there for a while, and when he was 7 years old, they moved to Palmdale, California, and spent kind of a hard scrabble kind of life farming on an 80-acre farm. But then his dad finally moved him over to Glendale, California, where we'll get to his high school days now, and we'll have a picture or two here that'll show you something about his high school life. He was kind of a leader in his class, in his school days. Secondly, we see Marion Michael Morrison, or John Wayne, as president of his senior class. And in 1925 at Glendale High School, California. Then there's another picture, high school, and especially football. He was a football player, and there's a picture showing that, of him being with his team, and also there's a picture in the annual that shows him as senior dance committee chairman. So you see he has a full life there, very early in life. Then we see him in his football uniform. He weighed 170 pounds. I noticed that most of them on the team didn't weigh much over 170. I didn't see any 200-pounders, but on the same team with him was Bob Bradbury, who's known as Bob Steele. His brother, Bob Steele, or Bob Bradbury's brother, Bill Bradbury, was on the same football team. And later on, Bob Steele was in some of his movies. I remember him particularly in the movie with John Wayne, in one called Comancheros. Now, you'll see a picture of the whole team there, and right in the center, seated, I think there are 11 players down on the front row who are seated, and John Wayne's kind of in the middle with a big grin on his face. So those were evidently some happy days for John Wayne. But we're talking about his tomorrows. His life was very full. There were also some comics. Adobe Press put out 31 issues of John Wayne adventure comics, and we see a front cover of #1 here. This is the American issue put out by Toby Press. And then we see, I think it's a rather rare Canadian copy. The SDD on the front of it stands for the fact that it's a Canadian copy, but the stories were exactly the same. Then we find on #2, it's interesting, on #2, and you ought to get a hold of some of these comics and take a look, read them, because there's some pretty good adventures, adventure stories, and some nice artwork that's involved there by Al Williamson and Frank Frazetta were the artists, and they're pretty well known in the art world. Then on #3, there's a picture on the inside back cover on #3 that shows John Wayne, John Agar, and Forrest Tucker, and it's a scene from Sands of Iwo Jima, which of course John Wayne was the star in that picture. And then we have number 5. It has a story drawn by a cartoonist, not about John Wayne, but it's kind of a backup story, and it's called Potshot Pete. And it was by a man named Harold Kurtz, who went on to be a famous artist doing Mad Magazine. Now, in number 5 comic put out by Toby Press, there was a story in there called The Raiders of Blush Pine, and I thought it was significant in that in one of the stories there, well, it was that story, The Raiders of Blush Pine, he had a saying in there. He said, hating men for their skin color is just a cover-up for cowardice. I thought that was pretty perceptive of the Duke. I do understand that he was conservative, and he would refuse to be in any roles that would be immoral. You know, the good book says, behold, the eye of the Lord is upon them that fear him, upon them that hope in his mercy. And it also says, blessed is everyone that feareth the Lord, that walks in his ways. It was likely later on in life, towards the end of his life, that John Wayne became Catholic in his religion. I believe it was just a few days before he died. His family was gathered around him, and he gave his life to the Lord and made the Catholic confession. He was baptized and joined the Catholic Church. And I think it was mainly due to the influence. There are other theories about it, but mainly due to the influence of his family. All of his children, I believe, were Catholic. He even had one grandson who was called Father Matthew Munoz, who told about John Wayne's values, and he lined them up this way. He said, with my granddaddy, John Wayne, it was God first, and then family, and then country. And I thought that was very telling about John Wayne. And I still remember a movie called The Greatest Story Ever Told, and in that movie, John Wayne played a centurion. It was kind of a cameo role, and in that he was standing beneath the cross, and he said, truly, this man was the Son of God. And, you know, I wonder if that had any influence on his life also, but it was later in life that he made a confession about his faith, and he always said he'd been too busy to do it before. So I think of that line that he had in that movie. John Wayne, he always tried to help out younger stars too with him in a lot of his movies. He helped out, I think, his career, or the careers of people like Roy Rogers and Ricky Nelson and Ron Howard and James Caan were helped by being in some of John Wayne's movies. But listen, I hope you watch the next episode about John Wayne. We want to get into John Wayne and Ricky Nelson. So watch out for that. And meanwhile, may the good Lord take a liking to you.